Well, good evening, Beaumont. You've no doubt heard by now that we have done the unthinkable. At least it is for most people. President Trump announced shortly after 4 a.m. Eastern that the attacks on Venezuela had led to the capture of the country's fugitive strongman accused of narco trafficking, and that would be Nicolas Maduro. This is great news. The United States successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and Nicolas Maduro, who had been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. The operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Details will follow. Now, one of the things that a lot of you may not know, Nicolas Maduro was the head of a drug cartel, and his plan was to completely destroy the United States through drugs. And that's what they were doing. Now, Donald Trump has warned him, said, quit it. We've taken his boats out of the water. We've taken his oil tankers out of the water. But Maduro was a typical communist, kind of like Mamdani up in New York City. He will not quit. And so consequently, the only thing to do was to remove this guy because, let's face it, he's been waging war against us for a long time and for no reason other than the fact that he hates the idea of a free country. So on Truth Social, Donald Trump said, we have successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and Nicolas Maduro. They've been flown out of the country. There will be a news conference at Mar-a-Lago, and I will try to bring you that probably maybe on the Saturday show. But the Associated Press initially said that neither the Pentagon nor the White House would comment on the attacks, and calls to the U.S. Southern Command responsible for oversight of military operations in the region have not yet been answered. Fox News reported this about 3 a.m. on Saturday morning. So there you are. While the sources did not go on record as to what the aims of the attack were or what the first targets had been, Fox also reported that an hour before the attacks began, the Federal Aviation Administration issued a notice to airmen that prohibited all American aircraft from operating at all altitudes within Venezuelan airspace. This report came 1 hour after videos from the capital showed numerous explosions along with lots of low-flying aircraft. There were Nick Sorter put out on X reports of U.S. Army helicopters, Chinooks special operations seen flying over Caracas, Venezuela during suspected U.S. airstrikes. At least 12 explosions appeared to have occurred throughout the city. These Chinooks are believed to be from the U.S. Army. The operation was able to extract both Maduro and his wife, and initial reports claimed that one of the types of helicopters used in the attack was a variant of the CH-47 Chinook transport, and indicated that the operation may have been intended to either get troops in or to get a high-profile target out. It now appears, with the Maduro capture, that is the case. The entire ground shook. It was horrible, said Carmen Hidalgo, a 21-year-old office worker. We felt like the air was hitting us. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro reportedly ordered all national defense plans to be implemented and declared a state of external disturbance. Although, given what we know now, it's unclear whether Maduro or perhaps one of his associates had actually sent that message. People to the streets, a statement from the government said. The Bolivian government calls on all social and political forces in the country to activate, use mobilization to repudiate this imperialist. I want to remind you that Maduro picked this fight. Donald Trump said quit it. He wouldn't do it. He kept sending drug boats up here. He kept trying to sell his oil to our other foreign enemies. And Donald Trump finally said enough is enough. So, even though Maduro was condemning U.S. military aggression, remember when he came in and took over all of the American oil assets in his country. This has happened before, for instance, in some African countries, but in those cases, they immediately ponied up and paid damages to the American companies whose equipment they stole. Relations between Maduro's communist government and the Trump administration have never been very stable. During the first term, Donald Trump recognized opposition leader Juan Guaido as the legitimate leader of the South African nation because he technically did win the election. But that did not destabilize Maduro's hold on the country, nor did the 2024 Venezuelan elections, which were completely rigged And there were Americans involved in that, by the way. But tensions began to mount as the Pentagon began striking at boats that were operated by the narco-terrorist organization. Police Saturday morning attacks came after a drone strike against a docking area being run by the Venezuelan drug cartels last week. The first U.S. military operation on Venezuelan soil came after Donald Trump ordered a blockade against his regime after the seizure of the first oil tanker. So, he had a chance to surrender. He had a chance to give up. And at one point in time, I understand that he did call Donald Trump and beg for mercy. He said, look, just get me out of the country and I'll forget everything. So, I don't know, maybe that's actually what's happening. But the point is, he lost his last election, and now the rightful president is going to be reinstalled in Venezuela. Venezuela used to be the richest country in South America, and it only took 10 years of communism or democrat socialism, whatever you want to call it, to completely destroy that country's finances. So now, of course, we're going to get a up-close and personal view of that in New York with Ma'am Danny. In other news, the Small Business Administration, Kelly Loeffler, announced that her agency is suspending thousands of Minnesota borrowers amid the suspected fraudulent activity. Ladies and gentlemen, there's so much fraudulent activity going on in Minnesota right now, but it is absolute proof that there's no need for an income tax in America. All we got to do is quit giving money to all of these anti-Americans and all of these other countries, and we will have plenty of money left to run the government, especially with tariffs. The IRS must be abolished. Anyway, Ms. Loeffler wrote in an X post that the SBA has taken the action to suspend 6,900 borrowers in Minnesota after reviewing thousands of potentially fraudulent paycheck protection programs and economic injury disaster loans approved in the state. She added that the borrowers in the state suspected of fraud have approved 7,999 loans totaling $400 million. In total, these borrowers were approved for $7,900 in 7,900 different loans worth about $400 million. Now, I can tell you that I, as a small business during COVID, I applied for an SBA loan and I was denied. These individuals will now be banned from all SBA loan programs, including disaster loans going forward. We will refer every case, where appropriate, to federal law enforcement for protection and repayment, prosecution and repayment. After years, the American people will finally see the criminals who stole from the law-abiding taxpayers being held accountable, and this is just the first state, Ms. Loeffler said. Meanwhile, Democrat criminal Governor Tim Walz has been grappling with how he can escape these allegations of fraud that he's absolutely involved in. Loeffler sent a letter to Walz stating that her agency is going to stop $5.5 million in additional funding to Minnesota until further notice. Of course, $5.5 million is just chump change when you consider the tens of billions of dollars that they have already stolen from us, much of which ended up funding al-Shabaab over in Africa, an anti-Christian Islamic terrorist group. A variety of COVID-era relief programs have notably been targeted by fraudulent activity. 3 Chinese-owned firms agreed to dole out $7.3 million to resolve the allegations that they submitted false claims. In other news, Mexican President Sheinbaum has energetically condemned the U.S. for what they did with Maduro over there. Claudia Sheinbaum, who at least was honestly elected, condemns the U.S. operation. Mexico made an urgent call with respect to international law as well as the principles of the UN Charter. And of course, the United Nothing, as you know, has never achieved anything. Well, they've achieved nothing. That's why I call them the United Nothing. But they've called for cessation of aggression against the Venezuelan government and the people. Well, there's been no aggression against the people per se, unless you consider all of the people of Venezuela to be part of the drug cartels, which is not entirely out of the question. The document went on to say that Latin America and the Caribbean is a zone of peace, built on a basis of mutual respect, peaceful controversies resolution, and the proscription of threat and use of force. So, like when these drug dealers take these guys and run them through the wood chippers or burn them, or whatever else they do to them down there. That's all done peacefully. Mexico emphatically reiterated the dialogue and negotiations are the only legitimate and efficient ways to solve these existing differences. And it's worked so well that I can't believe that we've even had to do anything. The attack was also condemned by Russia and Iran. And this is very concerning and condemnable, Moscow added in a statement Saturday. Russia also called for the prevention of further escalation and backed calls for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. But remember, the United Nothing Security Council is made up mostly of criminals. President Trump said Maduro and Flores were flown out of the country on Saturday following a large-scale strike, and of course we are happy for that. Republican Senator Mike Lee and Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that they plan no further action in the country now that Maduro is in custody. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a wonderful. We're very, very grateful for it. I think what worries Scheinbaum the most about this is the fact that she's very, very cozy with the drug cartels. And indeed, when they offered her the choice of silver or lead, she said, I'll take the silver, thank you very much. And I think she's very concerned that if Trump can do that to them, why don't we do it to Mexico? And of course, I've long said that I believe we should annex Mexico, entirely annex it. Look, every Mexican citizen apparently wants to come to the United States. They want the prosperity we have. I say let's take the prosperity of the United States down to Mexico. Let's take Pemex, get rid of all the corrupt thieves that have been running Pemex and turn it into a profitable petroleum organization again. And then we could send former Governor Perry down there. He speaks pretty good Spanish. He could be the new governor of Mexico, and I think we could fix a lot of problems. And of course, I also have to ask you the question. Why are you not advertising right here on Freedom 1300? Because this is where all of your friends are, and you can reach the highest quality people right here on Freedom 1300. We cover the entire Golden Triangle, 1,400 square miles. Let's get your word out there. If you're the best at what you do, let's get that word out there. Give us a call at the station today. What do you think? Send me a note. See you guys tomorrow. You have a choice, and you chose Freedom 1300.